All right, now let's
Welcome.
now camera. Let's see if I can get the camera.
We are live, and welcome to the JeopardyFan.com's 26th live panel. I am Andy Saunders, decidedly not Harrison Ford, nor do I care. So, once again, we have quite a panel joining us this evening to discuss Jeopardy, King of the Nerds Sports Jeopardy from the past week. First up, I would like to introduce the founder of the JeopardyFan.com. Welcome once again to Jeanie Kenkel. Then we also have contestant from Season 3 of King of the Nerds, former Tournament of Champions winner on Jeopardy, Colby Burnett. I hope you don't mind that I donned fedora for the open, and he looks very unimpressed. That's okay.
Maybe his camera's frozen.
No, he's not frozen. But,
oh, there he is. Okay.
There he is. We're good. We also have, from the most recent Sports Jeopardy, Andrew Ungvari. Welcome. He joined us right at the last minute here, so welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm going to still try to get the camera to work.
I'll type something out for you. So if you can follow those instructions, that would be awesome.
Okay.
Moving on to some Jeopardy contestants, we have a two-time champion from a few weeks ago, Christine Kim. Thank you for joining us as well. And from the most recent Teachers Tournament, we have Colin O'Grady, Lydia Cuffman, and Mary Bayer.
Hi.
So I'm going to remove the hat.
It's a good look.
Oh, no, that looks good on you, Andy.
Okay. Put it back on. So yes, we're going to open up with discussion about King of the Nerds. And Colby, you got sent to the Nerd Off.
Yeah, it was just a matter of time.
Yeah, I guess people they consider you a threat, so they sent you there, and you did pretty well.
Yeah, it was a scientist. So, and after all they basically said was that we need to know about, nerd history. So, all right, what does that mean? And I basically sat there looking at scientists, mathematicians, like fantasy writers, and all of this stuff for hours. And then it's like, well, you need to just put these 10 people in order by birth date. And we're going to throw a bunch of random physical challenges at you just to make it interesting. And I'm glad I did as well as I did. So I will say that reaching in that pot of live snakes, there was definitely that moment where, like, I took a second, like, that move away, and just realized, no, none of these can be poisonous. None of these can harm me. So I'm just going to reach in and I'm just going to punch my way towards the bottom and grab whatever's in there that I need to grab and keep moving. So it's all right.
That exactly was my question for you, like how you felt about the snakes, because it didn't seem like it bothered you. It looked like it bothered Ori, but not you.
It bothered Ori much more than it bothered me. But
wow.
As soon as I had these can't be poisonous. They can't try to constrict me or harm me in any way, because that would be that'd be a real liability on their part. So I reached in, and I'm pretty sure I may or may not have punched a snake in the head. That was reflexive, and I was able to keep moving. That's really what gave me that slight time advantage that I had at the end.
Well, for the sake of our viewers who might not know this, or others on the panel, generally most snakes are harmless. Even if they bite, it's like apparently, from what I've been told, it's been like 1,000, a bunch of tiny pinpricks. It's not a very significant injury at all to be bitten by a snake. Basically, one of my good friends runs a wildlife education business and keeps a whole bunch of snakes. And so, I mean, I spent last night with there's no pictures of it, but I had a snake around a rather large Burmese python. around my neck last night. So that was.
It's very Britney Spears of you.
And yes, apparently my friend has had over 4,500 snake bites and has had one bandage from the 4,500 snake bites combined. So they were not harmful. Also, snakes don't have a very good memory. Basically, it's, should I be afraid of this, or should this be afraid of me? And that's all a snake can think of. So being punched in the head, don't worry too much about it, Colby. Don't worry too much about punching the snake in the head. It's already forgotten. It probably forgot about it 5 minutes. 5 minutes after.
I certainly hope so. Because we may have had to come back and reshoot. Like, we had to go back and reshoot opening up the Aldrin snakes. So I certainly hope there were no hard feelings that I had to go back there. So I think that's enough about that run.
So earlier on in that episode, you definitely took charge on your team's nerd anthem, which took the form of a rap. I liked it.
Yes, so did I.
Moby didn't think so.
Well, to be fair, none of the 3 celebrity judges thought so. So, the sound, it's a small auditorium. The sound system wasn't that great, and I understood that if we're going to go out there and rap, that the acoustics would have to be pristine because we said there were a lot of words, and as soon as I heard Lisa Loeb state that, oh yeah, about the lyrics, I didn't quite understand them, and there were a lot of them, and then that's another thing that caused me to throw up my hands and say, okay, go, Colby, you're about to go into this nerd-off, and your team's about to lose. So, I'm glad we did what we did, but I guess I took charge so much, and I said, hey, if anybody knows how I can convert these lyrics into a rock song, I'd be happy to hear them, because I don't know how to do that, and then it never happened. So, meh.
Huh.
And also, for the benefit of those who are tuning in and may have missed the episode, A, spoiler alert, B, Heather kind of went off on Moby quite a bit. How did that look or how did that feel from your perspective, Colby, seeing Heather stand up for Ori against Moby?
I mean, I suppose it was good, but I sort of kept my mouth shut because, we're already in a bit of a hole. Like, we hadn't seen the other team come out. So, I mean, we weren't expecting to get, outplayed as badly as we did. But I just said, we're already going to have to scrap because they're going second. They know exactly what they have to do to win, just like we did the previous, 2 weeks ago. And I said, let's not further tick off the judge, who, the judge, bit of a jerk, or a lot of a jerk, as the case may be. I was so focused on trying to win that I kept my mouth shut, and like Heather does what Heather does, and whatever happened to happen. So I was sort of pleased to know after it was all said and done that when Moby accosted my throwaway lyric of reading Hamlet in Klingon, he basically name drops, oh yeah, what do Klingon warriors drink, before going into battle? And of course, like, nobody freaking knows because that was mentioned in maybe 3 episodes of TNT. And he goes like, prune juice, and like with his face. And trust me, like, I understand what real smugness looks like. They have been accused of it multiple times. And we look up, and no, that's not Vulcan. That is just Worf. And so he name drops that and is wrong, which is one of the least nerdy things that you can do. So.
Huh.
So the moral of the story is Moby is a jerk. Let's see, what else? So in terms of the people who are not part of the first major alliance, it is you and Caitlin, both of whom have had to survive nerd-offs.
And I mean, whether or not it stays that way, you're just going to have to watch. So, Chris, you can trust that Caitlin and I both wanted that alliance to crack, and Caitlin is able to see the writing on the or was able to see the writing on the wall before I did. And I mean, you'll just have to see how that works out. And right now, it's 6-2. So I'll let you think about how that's going to work out.
Did you know you were such a target before seeing it on TV?
I knew that if my team, after losing the first challenge, I definitely had the feeling that if my team were to lose, that after already being targeted by both my team and the other team from the start, all right, so they picked Jacob and they picked Ori, and I felt that if we lost again, that either my team would pick Ori, the other team certainly wouldn't, because they think he's, a load we have to carry, and that he's very easily distracted, and to a certain extent they're right, he's a good guy. But then I thought, the other team will go after, the strongest player, and for whatever reason, like, they thought it was me when we started. They'll certainly think it was me after sort of being an integral part of the 2 wins that we had, and then taking the lead with this one. So, yeah, there's bullseyes on front, back, all limbs, and, like, head at this point. So be it.
Yeah.
Now, it seemed like you showed some skills in terms of rapping that a lot of us didn't know you had. Do you think you have a couple verses about Jeopardy in you?
No, I do not freestyle. And the next category plugs for Little Caesars, and I said, Colby, go freestyle about Little Caesars. Like, I don't freestyle about anything, and I certainly would not start.
Not even a hot and ready? Come on.
Not even a hot and ready. It is a $5 pizza, and I will say that and I'm not under contract to say that Little Caesars is awesome, but it is what it is. And watching how the entire show goes sort of a way to plug it, like that scene in Wayne's World, it was very, very much free to do this, and that y'all understand about it as we possibly can.
Okay.
Well, we tried, Andy.
Yeah, we tried. As I was told, the worst you could say was no. So.
Yes.
So moving on a little bit, we have a contestant from this past week's Sports Jeopardy, Andrew. So,
yes. Can you hear me?
Yes,
yeah, we can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. So yeah, I'm troubleshooting, and it said the best thing to do would be to quit it and reopened it, and that seemed to work. So.
Cool.
Perfect.
Yeah. Happy to make it.
Good. Us too.
Okay. So first up.
Yeah. I know this is the first of these that I've done, so I don't know. Are you gonna ask me some questions or?
Oh, of course, yeah. That's exactly right.
All right.
I'm just having some difficulties myself. But that's okay. Speaking of difficulties, it seems like you have some buzzer issues early on.
Well, we did the practice game with Jimmy beforehand, and they told us ahead of time you can either go off of Dan or Jimmy's voice, or you could go off of the lights. And when we did the rehearsal, I went off of Jimmy's voice, and it seemed to work. And I figured, that'll be my strategy. I'll go off the voice, and I never, I got so caught up in how, not bad I was doing, but and how little I was doing and performing, that I never thought to try to change it up. And, you know, I didn't think that there was anything wrong with my buzzer. I knew that was the case, but I never thought, oh, maybe I'm too early. I just thought those guys were faster than me. And during one of the breaks, someone said to me, you know, it looks like you're jumping in a little too early. And then at that point, I figured, let me go off the lights, and then my luck seemed to change a little bit, and had it done it a little earlier, maybe I would have pulled off a miraculous upset.
Oh.
Or comeback, not upset. But it was so fun nonetheless. You know, I didn't feel bad. I felt bad for Anthony, the guy that ended up finishing third, because he missed a question that probably 98% of the people watching the show know the answer to, and he just blanked at that worst possible moment.
What, the final?
The one about the Lambo lead. Yeah.
Which one?
It was, the category I think was celebrations, and it was about Leroy Butler of the Packers was the first person to do this, and it was the Lambo lead. And you know, it was one of those ones that is probably going to haunt him for a while. And
he didn't even have an answer there at all.
Yeah, I don't know what he thought it quite possibly. And the Packers was part of the clue, so you would think, you know, at least he would have thought maybe that direction, but he just froze. But what I think, you know, they edited out. I think Dan I think he only wanted to wager 1,000, and I think Dan kind of said something like, "That's it," and then next thing you know, he changed it to 4,000, and he ended up getting it wrong. And because I watched it again recently, and I didn't, you know, and I was paying closer attention, and that wasn't in there. And I think he only wanted to wager 1,000. But you know, a question like that, you know, in hindsight, he probably wishes he would have, you know, gone all in, because 9 out of 10 times he probably would have got it right. Just in that moment, he did.
Yeah, I didn't know the answer to that one.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you made it on that show, you probably get that one. I'm surprised it was a daily double. Yeah, but the game, I watched next week's show, and I encourage everybody to watch it because it's a pretty dramatic game.
Woo!
Yeah, I definitely would tune into that one. But I remember Anthony, we watched it together, and we kept looking at each other going, wow, those questions are so much easier than the ones that we got, especially in the first round. And but, you know, it is what it is. Both guys were could have beat anybody, so it's not like I felt like I would have won had I been a part of that game instead. I just thought our game was tougher. But that's just the luck of the draw, I guess.
Yeah, it is. It sort of feels like everyone, the grass is greener, you know, in the other game.
Yeah. Well, the guy who won my game, during his pre-interview, I heard them talking about some of the best, I guess, sports experiences he had ever had, and he was talking to Amy about how he'd gone with some friends and watched a few days of the Tour de France, and then here we are playing the game. The one thing I probably know nothing at all about, other than Lance Armstrong and Greg LeMond, which was one of the answers, but I think he had it as a daily double. Yeah. And I look up there, and one of the categories is the Tour de France, and it was like, oh man, really? And they were, you know, video clues, so the timing on those video clues is also a little bit harder to gauge. Even though you can read the clue along with them, it was a little bit trickier also, because we didn't have any of those in the rehearsal, so it was harder to gauge those anyways. But I probably would have got all but one of them wrong anyhow. But yeah, no, it was. It's a shorter game also. You know, there's one fewer question per category than on the regular show. So your chances of coming back are less, because the game is shorter and the values of the points are less also. So I'd kind of gotten buried so far down that I needed a daily double, and when I got one, unfortunately for me, I didn't have enough points to wager more than 2,000. So even though I got the question right, I think I'd been buried too far down to make it all the way back. But and then I got 2 wrong, and that hurt me too. But I'm not haunted by those. I felt like I needed to take guesses, and they were both, I think, 500-point clues, and it is what it is. You know, you always wish you could start over. And that's the thing, you need to block out the fact, and I said this during the interview that's actually on there, you can watch at the end of the show. I said, you're trying to block out what's going on in your head, and what's going on in your head is don't embarrass your family, because this thing's going to live up there forever. Unless somebody DVRs an episode of Jeopardy and then they decide to save it, they can't watch it whenever they want. for us, those are on Crackle forever. So, or at least for now, and who knows how much longer they might be on there. I'm only on the 21st episode, so anybody who watches it's going to see me humiliate myself. And so that was going through my head, and then you're trying to go, okay, just play the game. And look, I was totally relaxed. I was a stand-up comic as a teenager, so I don't have a problem under lights or with cameras on. It was just the fact that I was doing bad that made me start sweating, not the fact that I was under the lights. It was just sort of like, this is not going as well as I'd hoped it would go, but just don't finish with 0 and don't finish negative. I didn't want to look up at the final Jeopardy game and see one empty seat. That never looks good, especially if it would have had my name on it. The ghost.
It also seems like Dan Patrick was busting your chops a little bit more than Alex does, which I'm sure can't help.
Yeah, well, what's funny is, and somebody asked me that on Facebook. They said they wanted to a Vine video of him making fun of me on Facebook, and I said the best was that anybody who's been on the show knows that you can't, once you've taped your show, you can't talk to any of the contestants that haven't been on the show yet. Oh. So after we taped ours, I had to go eat. Well, everybody went to go eat, and they told me that I couldn't sit with any of and we were the first show. So I couldn't sit with anybody. So I'm sitting there eating my El Pollo Loco by myself while everybody else is sitting at the same table. And over comes Dan, and he's in his undershirt, so that he doesn't get food on his nice clothes. And he looks at me sitting by myself, and he goes, "What? Nobody wants to sit with the loser?"
Oh.
I mean, he was joking when he said it. He probably knew that was the case. But it was one of those things where, and then you can also see him say something to me after the game when he's shaking my hand, which was he thought I was going to pull it off, and I came pretty close. I didn't think Anthony was going to bid so little in Final Jeopardy, so I just needed somebody to get it wrong, and unfortunately he got it right, and I knew he would. It wasn't that difficult of a question that it would take a miracle to win, but the fact that I made it to Final Jeopardy and had a chance to win the game. And when looking at the score, I didn't. It looks a lot closer than the game might have been. That was good enough for me. Yeah. And then when they sent me the still photos, to post on social media in advance of the show airing, the one they sent me had the two guys, one of them with 3,500 points, one with 3,000 points, and I still had 0. So I was like, I'm not going to post this one, and send me one where the scores are a little bit closer. If I'm going to put one on my wall, it's not going to be one where I have 0 points, So I had the other two at least. So I posted the one with me and Dan, and the other one looks like a baseball card and fake, so I didn't want to post that one, but I'm glad I have them.
Cool.
Thanks for being able to join us, Andrew.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks for having me. That was so much fun.
Are you going to see any other tapings since you live in Los Angeles?
Am I muted? I have. I have 2 small kids. A 1-year-old. Well, she'll be 1 on Wednesday, and a 4-year-old. 2 girls. So I would love to, if I had the chance to go and sit for a day and watch. I just don't know if that's going to happen anytime soon. It was a miracle that not a miracle that my wife had no problem. Obviously, she knew it was a dream. But I think if I got the chance to go and I wasn't playing for money, I don't know if she'd be so understanding. But yeah, maybe she'd come with me. I would encourage anybody to go. It's a lot of fun, and they do a lot of stuff throughout that kind of keeps people from getting bored during all the downtime. But yeah, no, I'm definitely gonna. I tried not to overdo it with watching the show before I went on, because I didn't want to drive myself nuts and start thinking about all the things that maybe I didn't know or should study. And my wife said the best thing to me. She said, like, you've practically been studying for this your whole life without knowing that you were studying for this. I mean, the fact that I, knew all this stuff and hadn't had anywhere to use it. So it wasn't like there was anything. Whereas if I'd gone on the regular show, I know there's areas that I've seen on the show a lot. Like I'm horrible when it comes to things like mythology, Greek mythology. I'd probably do a little bit of that, and maybe study more capitals or presidents, things like just to kind of brush up on. But with something like sports, it's like there's once you start, it's an endless rabbit hole. So you might as well just go in with what you know and hope that's enough. So I didn't watch a ton of shows, but that's great now because now I have probably 15 or 16 shows I can watch and binge watch and enjoy.
Yeah.
Okay. we have there we go. My apologies again. We have Christine Kim here. She was champion a couple of weeks ago, finally able to join us. First of all, I will say you were probably one of my favorite champions to watch over the past couple of months. So my first question for you actually, how much time did you spend looking at wagering strategy going in? Because it seemed to me that you won at least one of your games simply because of how much you had bet on one of your daily doubles actually in your second game.
Like many people, I consulted that website, thefinalwager.com, or is it .co, I think. Anyway, and so for those of you who have seen it, he has a bunch of tutorials, like maybe 4 tutorials on it, but he says right at the outset that if you just like the first tutorial covers about 70% of all situations. So I watched most of one tutorial. I should have watched the other ones, which had sort of second and third order calculations, but I kind of like Andrew, I didn't want to make myself too crazy by preparing too much. So yeah, and the basic one, I just learned the very, very basic, which is according to that website, if you're the leader, you should bet to cover if the number 2 person doubles up, and if you're the number 2 person, you should bet that your only hope is hoping that the leader will bet to cover you and then get it wrong, and you just have to make sure you stay above that. So that was it.
That was a phenomenal bet, though. By the way, your second game, I was so excited when that worked out that way.
Thanks. That's very nice of you to say. Thanks. It was fun. But yeah, no, I think a lot of people are attributing a lot more brain power to me than warranted. I just had learned those 2 very basic rules, and then that was it.
I didn't study trivia really at all. I studied the final wager a lot, and so as soon as you nailed that bet, I was pretty sure that that's where you'd been doing your study.
It was a lot of luck. I mean, if my opponent had gotten the final Jeopardy question right, then nobody would care about my bet, and it wouldn't have been a brilliant bet. So that's what I tell people. It was lucky in a number of ways, and that's why a lot of attention got paid to it.
Now, other than wagering, how much I suppose I should ask, did you look at anything else in terms of studying, or did you go in with pretty much what you knew, like Andrew was mentioning?
I did. They don't, as we all know, they don't give you a whole lot of time between the time they say, hey, come into this studio on this date and the actual date. So I think like Andrew, I sort of knew there's some areas which I really don't know very much about. So I bought, the Shakespeare for Dummies book, those bright yellow books. I think it is Shakespeare and the Bible for Idiots or something. So Shakespeare and the Bible, as we know, come up a lot in Jeopardy. And don't know very much about either one. So I tried reading those books, but ultimately there's only so much you can do before you're taping. And in fact, I don't think a single fact from either one of those books came up, of course.
Uh-huh.
But you knew. You prepared.
Yeah, I don't even remember how much I remembered from that. I think in a much later Jeopardy that I watched, maybe it was one of yours or something, someone said there was a question about where the answer was the 2 Gentlemen of Verona, and I said, and I knew that because I happened to have read the Shakespeare for Idiots book, several weeks ago. But yeah, so it does come up. I don't recall it coming up in my shows.
Okay. Thank you once again for joining us as well, Christine. Yeah, okay. Sorry. Moving on to the features tournament. I guess for our champion wasn't able to join us, Jennifer, today.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there. Sorry. Let me see if she emailed me.
That's okay. We do have one of the finalists. Adam is in and out. I think he is. He's in it. Yeah, there he is. Let me see it. Let's see if I can unmute his microphone here. Come on. I am having so much fun with the technical aspects of the show today. I do apologize. It's not usually that bad.
Looks like he's saying something, right?
He's trying to say something, and for some reason his micro...
A pad, like a whiteboard.
Maybe he can type. Can you type, Adam? See the side?
He's driving.
You probably should not be
he's muted.
typing. You probably should not be typing.
Is he muted? Because I got the little mute logo on him.
Yeah, mine has that too, but maybe he muted it.
No. Once...
Look at him yelling.
Oh.
Oh. We did have sound on him.
Is he actually driving or just sitting in a car to get some privacy?
Okay, let's see if that's
What does that white piece of paper say, Andrew?
It says unmute.
It says unmute.
Oh.
I'm trying to unmute it, and it's not letting me unmute, and it's very annoying. And
Maybe not.
Oh,
Does that work?
that works.
Yes.
Hi.
Dude.
Hurrah!
Hurrah! Okay, did you unmute yourself? Oh, did you mute yourself then, Adam?
I tapped the screen where you're currently on my phone, and then a little microphone button with a slash through it popped up.
Okay. Well, looks like we've got it working again.
You got a mutant? Sorry, go ahead.
I thought that I had done something horrible on my own end. So.
Yep.
Okay. So yeah. First up, for those of you who were tuning in last week and remember my predictions, wow, was I ever off?
Yeah, thanks for that. I'll blame you and Trebek for jinxing us. Well, me at least.
What did you also jinx the beard off?
Did I?
No, not you. Of course not.
No.
Andy.
Yeah, I was on.
I
No,
didn't jinx the beard off. I said nothing of the beard off.
no, he picked. What would you pick? Kate, Lydia, and myself. Is that what it was?
Yeah, I think so.
So 0 for 3.
Yeah, 0 for 3, but I mean, looked like our 3 finalists on tape day number 2 had the run of the buzzer in their semifinals. Do our other semifinalists want to talk about what maybe the contestant coordinator said to them about the buzzer, or?
In our game, go ahead, Mary.
No, go.
In our game, I mean, obviously Adam was just in a different league, but I was getting in, and then Aaron wasn't getting in at all. And at the first commercial break, they came over, and it sounded similar to what you had said, Andrew. They came over and told her that she was buzzing in too late and to stop waiting for the lights and to start waiting, like cueing from Alex Trebek's voice. And then after that break, she started to get in more, which I guess I'm happy for her, but it turned it into an even more, well, then what happened. So I don't know if I guess they always do that. They can see how you're doing, and if you're continually messing yourself up, I think that's nice that they'll come and talk to you to give you a chance.
One of the things that my family and friends who I watched my episodes with noticed is that you could tell when I was getting into the rhythm of the buzzer, depending on how close to my chest my hand was. So if I got frustrated, I would swing my arm out to the side. And I remember that Maggie Speak, who's one of the contestant coordinators, came over and said, "You're wasting your energy by moving your arm, then buzzing." And so that threw me off a couple of times as well when I was not getting in for 5, 6, 7 questions in a row because I was making other motions unrelated to the buzzing action out of frustration or whatever.
Yeah, I think
you get in a rhythm. I mean, it's.
Yeah.
I hit in my quarterfinal. I think I hit 7 in a row, and from then wiped the game. Whereas in the semifinal, Kathy got that first clue, and then had the science category basically all to herself, and got a chance to get the rhythm of the buzzer, and it was almost game over from there. I mean,
Yeah. Well, and I remember, Colin, you wrote something on Facebook about how at that point you were like, please just say any name other than Kathy.
Just stay married. Stay married.
And I felt the same way.
Mary.
Yeah.
Is anyone else a lefty besides me here? Anyone? No?
No.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it was a disadvantage, but, you kind of have to use two hands if you want to use your left hand for the buzzer because you have to hold the wire with your right hand. It doesn't really, the cable itself is kind of heavy, so, you're holding one end with your right hand while you're hoping that you can, buzz it with the left. And in hindsight, I didn't know I wouldn't have the choice. I probably wish I would have practiced with my pen with the right hand a little bit more to see if I felt comfortable enough. Because I felt in the middle when I wasn't getting called, maybe I should try my right hand, and I just felt my right hand's just not nearly as strong. But
I have to say, that I think there are people who are very good on the buzzer in every single game, but I think Jennifer, among the 15 of us, was without question the best in terms of her buzzer technique, whatever that means. She seemed, whenever she wanted to get in first, she got in first. Even when in the finals up against me and Lydia, both of whom, I hate to sound like I'm tooting my own horn or something, but both of whom had pretty good buzzer luck in our first two matches, Jennifer was crushing us at points during both of the final days. And I don't know what it is about how she was working the buzzer, but she seemed to control the board whenever she chose to. Almost.
I'm curious, they haven't posted the final on J-Archive yet, but I'm curious to just look at the number that you each got in on. I mean, looking at our semifinal, Mary, I think I just looked at it yesterday. If I remember correctly, I got in on 14, you got in on 12, and Kathy got in on 29.
Yeah, it was insane.
I mean, wow, and that's not just one category. She smoked us, and so I'm curious to see the final. There were a few misses, and that that factors in the dollar amount. But I'm curious the who got in on the buzzer the most, because all three of you were fast.
I remember Colin during the champagne brunch immediately afterwards. I believe he used the word buzzsaw.
Yeah.
Or I forget the exact context, but when watching them on television, it seemed like in both the finals we got to the first commercial break a lot faster than I'd seen in other episodes, and it was because I think in one of the matches we didn't miss a question going into the first commercial break. It was 4 minutes maybe?
Yeah.
There was not a single clue left on any board in the entire tournament, which I'm really, like that's something we should all be really proud of, I think.
Could that be something to do with, though, the tournament design to have to eliminate any difficulties with wildcard standings?
I heard that.
The quarterfinal, they deliberately make sure they get through 60 clues.
Okay.
The semifinals, obviously, they could. I'd have to go back to see in previous tournaments if there were clues left on the board, but I would. In the semifinals and the finals, I don't think there's any reason why they have to get through the whole game. I mean,
True.
Generally they probably do, but...
Sorry if this is obvious, but how can they guarantee that you get through all the clues? Do they just let the game run longer if it needs to, or...?
And then probably edit it down.
I presume they would edit the interviews or Alex talking or...
Okay.
They do have that. Of course, I wish they would do that more often, so that we'd always get through 61.
Right.
But
Why not?
Well, I definitely felt like the buzzer was the hardest part of the game, by far. And everyone, watching my games was saying, there must be something wrong with yours. And I'm like, no, there was nothing wrong with it. They were just faster than me, or I was going too soon. Just getting that rhythm, far and away the hardest thing.
Did Maggie say anything to you in the semi when Kathy was killing us?
No, but Glenn came and talked to me in my quarterfinal when I was not getting in, and he came and talked to me during the break. And I don't know if it helped or not, but we did work on it a little bit then. Not during the semis. I think at that point, Kathy was just sort of, she ran with it, and
I was
we were
telling
left in her
you,
wake.
I did the I ran when they finally posted the, well, maybe it was after I watched the game back, but I because I'm a huge nerd, I tallied the Coriat for the Jeopardy round. Mine was 6,800, and I had 400 out of. So I was like, kids, I got 400 out of 6,800 that I knew because I couldn't get in on the buzzer. Like, she obliterated us, you know. And I had to tell people, like, yeah, I was buzzing in, guys. I really was. I promise. It was. Because I had my hands below the podium, and so I think a lot of people thought I was just, sitting there twiddling my thumb. So I was like, no.
Hey, can I ask, sorry, a totally random question about the teacher?
Course, yeah.
My husband and I were watching it. We just want to know, how do you even get picked to be in the quarterfinal? Like, are there tryouts, are there rounds before the quarterfinal, right? Because when we viewers see it, it's already quarterfinals.
It's just regular. We tried out for regular Jeopardy, qualified in the same way, and then when they're talking to you in your little interview, if they find out you're a teacher, they put you in this pool as well.
And did they say, do you have to do something before the quarterfinal, or do they say, okay, your first game is going to be a quarterfinal?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right, thanks. Sorry.
No. I mean, they're teachers throughout the year. I've always noticed that, but I think they for whatever formula they use, they pick 15 specifically to go into the teacher tournament.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, just when they say quarterfinal, it always makes me wonder if there were, qualifying rounds before that.
Right.
I guess one question for all of the teachers. How do you feel you represented your profession over the last 2 weeks on the program?
You represented it really well, all of you. It's so cute to see teachers.
It's interesting. There were a lot. The only two or three times I reached out to random people on social media were there are a few people who started picking at certain things, that they thought were basic, and the things that bother me, it was my basic American history is apparently terrible, but it wasn't. If someone says, "How did you not know that?" You're an idiot, and it makes it personal. Like, in a weird way, that didn't bother me. But there were a lot of people who said, "This is a picture of what's wrong with the American education system," and that got to me a little bit.
Yeah, me too.
And it's whatever. It's Twitter, so it's one person here, two people there. But there were a few times that I thought we all, and I think a lot of people did. Like, I think a lot of people looked at it and said, we should all be really proud of who the teachers are in this country. But there were a few people who looked at this and said, started questioning American public education or education in general because I didn't know George II. Or Kate actually wrote a wonderful blog post.
Yeah.
Apparently somebody said that she bounces too much and she's too bubbly to be a teacher. So that bothered me a little bit, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially because you're being required to, call on knowledge instantly that in the classroom, if you are in fact teaching that subject, you have time to prepare for. So it's not a good representation of what we do on a daily basis, as I think any game show is not a good representation of what anybody does on a daily basis. And so, that it did hurt to see people sort of picking at that and saying that for whatever reason, because we can't, instantly recall who Brancusi is, or whoever the sculptor was in our semifinal game, that we must not be good educators. And I think that is very hurtful. I think we all represented ourselves very well in our profession well, and our schools well.
I think we've all had teachers who knew lots of facts that were terrible teachers. Like, I don't think knowing a lot of trivia is at all a reflection on your teaching ability. And I don't know how I looked on TV, but I think it was really nice in my actual local community to be able to talk to my kids about how I went about preparing and how long I had been trying to get on this show. And sorry about that. And so I don't know from a national standpoint, but in my local Redwood City community, it was really cool to be able to have that with my kids and the rest of the town.
most of the media articles, I was really happy to, most of like the local news articles and the Washington Post article as well, where if like they mentioned Jeopardy, and I think they use Jeopardy as the reason there's a story, but most of the media wound up talking about my classroom and what I teach. And so I was really happy about that, because that's ultimately that's the thing that you know, I care more about than you know, I know. Well, the only things I can remember that I know are the things I suppose don't know. I now know that George III was the last king of America.
But again, you're an English teacher, not a history teacher, so.
Yeah, and that's you know, and Lydia, you just said like we've had teachers who know facts, that's not my, you know, none of our jobs are to teach information and to sort of teach kids to regurgitate. Like, we teach kids to think. And the thing that I wish people could see is I wish people could see the sort of the collaboratives, or you know, I mean, professionally it's collaboration, but just the communal spirit that's popped up. I mean, social media, like our little network that we've formed, has been really, really amazing over the last 2 weeks. Just in terms of people cheerleading for each other, and I wish people could see that, because I think that they'd walk away saying, oh, you know, teachers from all over the country, no matter what they teach, no matter where they're from, you know, teachers are people who work together, and I think that represents their profession incredibly well.
There's a moment in the final when I don't even remember what the actual answer was, but Jennifer missed it, and then Kathy missed it, and then Adam's like, not even going to touch that.
Yeah.
And you can't see it, but they're like commiserating with each other. They're laughing, and then Alex gets up, he's like, are you having fun? And it's like, yes. They were. Everyone was so friendly, and it was. I was worried they would cut it out, because they had cut some other stuff that Trebek had set out, and I just think that kind of encapsulates the spirit of the people that we worked with.
There was.
Yeah, and we all stood up and cheered, you know, at the end when Jennifer won. Oh no, sorry. We all stood up for Jennifer at the end, and we all, you know, were so proud to be a part of it. Go ahead.
There was the two moments that I told everybody to go back and rewind to for in the two finals. There was the one that you just mentioned, Lydia, and if you look when they get to the end of the Double Jeopardy round on the Thursday night, the first final, and when they realize that they're all dead, like in line with each other, that they were $600 apart, they look back and forth, and there's this look of like, all right, let's go, let's do this, and it very much was like sort of collective. Like, this is awesome, this is the way this should go, like we should all be sort of, and it's weird to think that we were all in it together even though we were competing against one another, but that's kind of the way it felt.
And I'm not sure that is, you know, the same in the regular game, because people are in and out more, so I sort of, you know, that was nice about the tournament situation. And I don't know if Colby's still in here, if he has that sort of feeling from the Tournament of Champions, or if it felt like that in that group as well.
Glenn had mentioned that when I talked to him on the phone before, you know, long before, when I was taking care of flights, he'd mentioned that, and so it was something that I had in the back of my mind, but I think it was so far beyond anything that Glenn had described, so it was something special.
I'm really glad to hear that. My next question for all of you, were there any categories that you wish had come up in your games that you didn't get a chance to play?
I know
American History E. I'm an American History teacher. My kids were like, we saw that category, Miss Cuffman, we're so sorry you didn't get it. And I'm like, I am too.
I wanted pediatrics, because I think my kids have had every single, you know, common childhood and some not common childhood diseases. They didn't have pediatrics, but one was a question about mononucleosis, and the answer was the Epstein-Barr virus. And I only knew that because my son had mononucleosis when he was in first grade. So I thought, okay, good. Now that's worth it. I'm glad he got it back then. But yeah, I wanted anything related to raising kids and their diseases and the pitfalls.
I wouldn't have minded Shakespeare anagrams, Mary.
What can I say? Yeah, I was hoping for more that were theater related. I know there was Final Jeopardy, Broadway musicals, things like that. I didn't get any of those. I got reference book authors instead. So, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, during my rehearsal, there was a question about Kent Merker, who was this obscure pitcher who pitched, you know, for probably 10 years, and he pitched a no-hitter against the Dodgers, and I don't think anybody remember Kent Merker. I was at that game, And I was like, this is so weird. I always tell people that I went to Kent Merker's no-hitter, and first people say is who's Kent Merker, and then the second one is like, oh, you were really at that game. And so it's so funny that of all the random questions that were in my rehearsal, or even there, was this obscure no-hitter that I had actually attended in 1994.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. But I think the funniest thing about the whole experience is that you don't ever think about money. That you could be winning at least while you're playing the game, and when it's over with, it's really the furthest thing from your mind because it's this adrenaline rush, and you're so into it, and you're fulfilling kind of like this dream, and you're playing this game on this set, and it's just like this crazy experience, almost like virtual reality. And then afterwards, they give you this piece of paper that they ask you to sign about money, and you're like, oh wow, I get money too? Like this is kind of cool, but I forgot about that, because that's the last thing that's really on your mind while you're into it.
Yeah.
I'd forgotten Kent Merker had a solo no-hitter. When you said I was at the Merker no-hitter, I assumed it was the joint no-hitter he had, his first one. But
no, yeah, this one, and it was also the first game that Chan Ho Park ever pitched in, and we went randomly, a buddy of mine, and otherwise I would have no witness that I was there if it, But yeah, it was, and then that's the great thing about the internet is I can save my ticket stubs my whole life. So being able to actually go online and look up dates of games that I went to and go, oh yeah, I remember that. I can look at box scores and game stories, and I have 2 girls, but if I had a son, that would be one of the cooler things to do. Would be to collect all of the ticket stubs of all the games and game stories. My kids so far aren't that into sports, but yeah, I think that's one of the cooler things about the internet is not having to go to a library and look at microfiche if you want to read about a game you went to. You can read reviews of concerts you went to. I know people have been sending on social media all these reviews of SNL's first ever show because tonight's the 40th anniversary. So that stuff's kind of neat, and then a couple weeks ago was the 20th anniversary of the first time the president had been in the New York Times, I guess, when he was elected president of the Harvard Law Review. So that's so cool to me, and so it kind of ties in with the game because we're all sort of history or nostalgia and all that. So.
This was one of the funny things is, it's like the Slumdog Millionaire kind of thing about trivia is that, after I watched all this back, I had a lot of people sort of from various points in my life when probably I came to that knowledge. Like I remember my first clue that I got actually in the quarterfinal, my very first clue on Jeopardy was the one I got was who was Cool Hand Luke. We watched that in sophomore English, and I had multiple high school classmates who I haven't heard from in 10, 15 years contact me over Facebook to be like, Cool Hand Luke, you owe Mr. Schmenk a thank you for that one. And so, all of those answers have been things that at some point, Poison was my favorite band when I was 11 years old, and here Every Rose Has Its Thorn pops up on Jeopardy, and it really is, it's trivia, it's just things you collect over a lifetime, and yes, I just said that Poison was my favorite band.
The only person that I put down on my questionnaire for do you know anyone who's ever been on Jeopardy was a guy named Steve Boyd, who was on the mid-'90s. And I've talked to him a couple times since we taped, and one of the things that he told me was that when people come, if you miss a Final Jeopardy question, which I missed 3 out of my 4, and say, how did you miss Lord Byron or whatever, his response was, well, did you know all of the questions that I got to get to that point? No. And that is just the collecting of knowledge from childhood is I don't know how I got into my brain 90% of the stuff that I was able to pull out on national television over the course of the tournament.
Back to Andrew's point about the internet, I think that's a very interesting segue to something that I haven't actually had the opportunity to do at all in the 26 episodes. I will say the internet has made things a lot easier to research, not only old games, but also even going back like 100 years into baseball history. Just in case any of you guys are interested or want to, or any of the viewers are interested, I finally get a chance to plug my book. As bad as it gets. It's about the 1916 Philadelphia Athletics. lots of old baseball history, lots of old baseball research was done, and they went 36 and 117. And,
Oh God.
Wow.
it's been published by McFarland. It's available from McFarland on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Google Books. So if you're interested, please buy copies. That would be awesome. But also,
How did you have an interest in the 1916 A's?
basically, they're considered one of the worst teams in baseball history, and the good teams are the ones who usually get the ink. And so we thought, myself and my co-author John Robertson, we decided let's write a book about a bad team instead of a good team. So.
Are they bad? Were they bad for the same reasons that teams implode these days? You know, bad clubhouse chemistry and overpaid, spoiled athletes, and whatever injuries, or were they bad for other reasons?
Basically, it was an implosion. They had actually made the World Series 2 years earlier, and there was a third major league that had just started up, the Federal League, and a lot of their stars either jumped ship to the Federal League or ended up getting more money than ownership was willing to pay out. And also, after they got upset in the World Series, their owner, Connie Mack, decided he was going to just, again, implode, rebuild, and ended up a lot of the season trying out a number of untested collegiate prospects who ended up not playing very well. So that's kind of one of the reasons why they were not very good. They also had a few key injuries. Their starting catcher was injured opening day when he was one of their best players, and suffered a concussion and ended up having to go and play left field for most of the season. That's one of those. It was kind of a combination of a number of different bad things that all happened. I actually have a question for Adam, and I apologize for bringing this up, but you wish that Final Jeopardy was 31 seconds, don't you?
You could say that, yeah. I mentioned this.
Did you realize the answer might be Ganges?
So I mentioned this on Facebook, that if you had asked me before I'd even gotten a call that I was going to be on Jeopardy what my dream Final Jeopardy category could be, it would either be geography or flags. So for Final Jeopardy to come up with world geography, I mean, the fact that I didn't bet everything I had was an act of restraint. That's how much that category was what I wanted at that moment. And when I saw the question, my first thought was the Yangtze. And then I immediately dismissed that because it was too long. And then I went to the Rhine, the Rhone, the Danube, the Obe, and so on, so on, so on. The Hudson was a thought briefly. I went through as many rivers as I could think of, and all of them had something that allowed me to reject them as a possible answer. And then I realized I only had about 10 seconds left. I had nothing written down. I wrote down the Jordan, knowing that there was no way that was correct. It's way too short. And it wasn't until the song hits the high note, which I believe is exactly 5 seconds left, that I realized it was the Ganges. And I was 100% unshakably confident at that moment that it was the Ganges. I just didn't have enough time to write it down.
Mm-hmm.
So.
I gotta say, and you mentioned this on Facebook, but you came out gangbusters in that second game. Right, And it's really impressive, and I don't think people don't know that you had your heart ripped out of your chest like 10 minutes before, not a night before. But I had forgotten how quickly you started that second game. So watching it on Friday night, it looked pretty awesome, man. You definitely pulled that back together really, really quickly.
Thank you. One of the things, and I was gone for about 10 minutes there because my phone went weird, but one of the things that, I'm sorry, the gentleman who has the LA Dodgers cap on, he's not...
Yes, Andrew.
Andrew, sorry about that. Yeah, hi, Andrew.
No problem.
You mentioned how, like, at one point you forgot about the money aspect of playing. And during the second leg of the final, there was a moment, I don't remember exactly when, where Kathy and I turned to each other, and I forget which one of us said what, but one of us said, "I don't want this to end," and the other said, "I know, I'm having way too much fun." At that point, it didn't matter at all. Even if we were closer to Jennifer than we were, it didn't matter at all at that point in that Friday episode where we were money-wise. We were having the time of our lives playing at that point. That after I got back into the rhythm of the game, I kind of forgot about what had happened on the previous episode. It wasn't anywhere in my consciousness while I was playing during the second leg of the finals. And I think that's what allowed me to have as... Hold on, that sentence didn't make any sense. Colin, you're not the first person who said that, like, the turnaround aspect of the second episode was really cool to watch, but it wasn't something that I even had to consciously decide on because it was I got so caught up in playing again. I had so much fun playing again that it was easy, I guess.
I really loved watching you play, Adam, because you had your heart on your sleeve, and it was genuine. It wasn't like drama, you know what I mean? Counting the podium and all your reactions and stuff. I just loved it. So.
Thank you. I've gotten a little bit of blowback on the internet for it.
Oh.
People tweeting that I should have more class.
Oh.
Okay. Yeah.
That's weird.
Sorry, I just lost 10 grand on a question I should have known. I'm gonna react.
Yeah.
And I think that I'm biased, but I think collectively you had a group in this tournament that you had a lot of people who were fun to watch on television. Mm-hmm. And I got to see the entire thing. I saw every single episode because I was in the first game, but it looked even better on television than it looked in the studio. You had people that were just fun to watch that I think people are going to remember for a while. So I think that's kind of cool.
Do you guys all hope that Jeopardy runs some sort of teachers reunion tournament in a few years? In the future?
That would be so fun.
There was brief mention on Facebook by one of us to go to. We should go to LA for Jennifer's first episode of the Tournament Champions.
Yeah.
Well, how do you guys feel you do against Colby, who's a teacher tournament alum?
Not well.
No, that board is that board, and I would love if they brought a bunch of us back, a few years on. It's always fun getting a free trip out to LA. And
yeah. Colby, you better invite me if there is another tournament like that.
Okay.
I want to be in the studio audience.
Not a problem. Last time, I didn't have the studio audience. I didn't know anybody who lived out in LA at the time that had a Wednesday morning and afternoon free. So the only time I brought somebody into the studio was a friend of a friend whom I did not know, and I remember Maggie saying, "Oh yeah, Colby, did you bring anybody up for the Decades tournament to support you?" It's like, well, sort of. I don't know where they are right now. And then these two people start waving frantically at me. I was like, yeah, those guys. They're friends of friends, and we'll get to know each other after my episode aired, or after episode taped, which I mean, they were pretty cool, but that was it. But I do enjoy the kind of throwback, invite these people to show up, and it'd be great if they did it for the teachers. I mean, they do it for I think either the college kids or a teen week like years ago.
They did a teen reunion tournament about a while. I will go with a while ago.
Yeah, it's been a minute, but yeah, I would definitely love a teachers reunion tournament. See what I can do. And you never know.
Yeah, you never know.
Lydia.
Yes.
I'm curious as to what your thought process was and how you came up with Casanova. Is it a Don Corleone question?
Well, I had no
First thing
idea.
that came to your head, or?
I couldn't think of any Italian Americans who were fictional. So I went with a name that sounded Italian, sort of. I knew it was better to say something than to say nothing.
Yes.
And I knew it wasn't right, but I had some pretty dumb, wrong answers in this tournament that I have been hounded about, but, I said dumb stuff and they paid me $10,000, so. Yeah, there was all I could see was blankness in my head, so there was no real thought process there.
Did you say you got hounded about? Are you referring to like people around you, or are you talking about social media, or both? I mean, did you look at
mostly accidental social media? I tried to stay away from it, but it's unavoidable, and I feel like Martha in our tournament had a really good thing. She was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I must have missed your episode." Gives you any grief about missing stuff, because I think before I came on, I didn't realize that there's when I would play at home, it's like, oh, I know it or I don't know it, but there's also this like gray area of I maybe know it, and having to like make that decision every single time as to whether do I maybe know it enough, and just I guess particularly in my second game I went a little too far on the maybe I know it and guessing when I maybe shouldn't have, but I guess I said some dumb stuff, but I said some right stuff too, so I'm pretty pleased in general.
Yeah, and sometimes by the time you know whether or not you know it, someone else has already done it anyway. So.
Yeah.
And I would also say that the "oh, I missed your episode" is an excellent retort that should be used more often by Jeopardy players. So, my notes are now out of questions. Does anyone on the panel have anything that they'd like to ask anyone else at this point?
Well, I actually have to bow out. I have to go. So thanks so much, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you for joining
Bye,
us.
Smokey.
Bye.
Bye. I'm sorry, I kind of have to go too.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Andy and Jeanie and everyone else.
Thank you,
It
Christine.
was a pleasure and nice to meet, anyway, virtually, the rest of you. Good night.
Bye. Thank you, Christine.
Bye.
So, in any case, it looks like we're probably going to be signing off anyway, because I think we're out of questions. One thing I did know. Sorry, go ahead. You were saying, Jeanie?
Oh, I think this has been our longest hangout ever.
Probably. It wouldn't. I think we're up there. We're almost at the 75-minute mark. So.
Two-parter.
Yeah, we were short last week, so we're making up for it.
Yeah.
One thing I did notice for those watching Sports Jeopardy, I noticed this past week, they've put a leaderboard onto the Sports Jeopardy broadcasts.
I saw that.
Let's just say that might change next week.
Oh.
Andrew, were you guys aware? Like, do they keep you sequestered from all those scores?
No, they actually show the top three right. Okay, I was so great to be able to talk to people who know what I'm talking about. When when you're looking at the cameras at the beginning of the show when they're taking your picture, do they do that? Like when they're at the beginning of the show. So to your left of the camera, they actually had the top 3 scores there, so that when Final Jeopardy came along, you would know if you what score you needed to beat, because the top 3 will play for I think 125, 75,000. Yeah. So so with it didn't matter much with our game, but with the game after ours, it kind of came into play. But you'll see. But you would think it would be a distraction because you're trying to watch your own score, and it's there, but you kind of block it out. They didn't really need to turn it on until Final Jeopardy, but it was on the entire time.
It seems. I mean, that runs totally counter to what they do with the wild cards in terms.
Yeah.
Well, they also made sure to tell us that if you had to not only have a top 3 score, but you also had to win your game. So that could have come into play in next week's episode, because you could have had one guy play it a little bit more safe, thinking, "Hey, wait a minute, I can maybe lose this game and still get a shot." And knowing that they made that abundantly clear to us, it definitely had an impact.
Huh.
But I think also I have no inside information here, but my own thought as to why they do one thing for Sports Jeopardy and one thing for the wild cards is that because they're taping it at such a point where episodes have aired before others have taped, people will have that information anyway, so they might as well put in the
Yeah, and the other thing is that because champions don't stay on in our game, everything's kind of standalone, and the only thing that will at least look anything remotely like previous episodes is the fact that the Tournament of Champions will have previous contestants. Every other episode will have 3 brand new contestants, so people can watch them in any order. So I guess, maybe that has something to do with it. But how much time did you guys have to prepare? I'm just curious. I'm sure it's all different between your finding out you were getting the show taping.
I got a call in September.
Earlier I was that's it. That's cheap. I didn't get called till October.
Yeah, me too.
I call shenanigans on Maggie and Glenn and.
I mean, it might have been late September, but I don't think it was that far off. It was definitely. They called me at my school. They called me at school in my classroom well enough into the school year, so it wasn't like it was Labor Day weekend. But yeah, it was maybe 3-4 months between being called and taping.
Oh. I only had 5 weeks.
Wow.
Maybe 6 weeks.
Yeah, I got called October 25th, and I taped December 7th.
Huh.
That's quick. I think I got called first week of October, and obviously we tape mid-December.
Right.
Huh.
Well, they have LA people as alternates usually, and since I live here, because they don't want to stack the show with LA people early on, so they didn't need me to come in. They called me the night before and said, "Okay, everybody's accounted for. We don't need you to come in." And I think that was around. That could have been maybe, I don't remember if it was August or September, whenever it was. So they said, "But if we don't use you, we'll use you in January." So I kind of had 6 months, or it could have been less than 24 hours had I been used. But
there was a guy there with us. There was actually a 16th person with us who was an LA-based teacher. I didn't talk to him as much as some other people, but it sounded like that if he didn't get on during the teachers tournament, he had a standing guarantee that he would appear within the next X months.
That's how they did it with my run. So there was this guy named Jonathan, and very nice guy, and they gave him $100 for basically they put him up in a hotel. They gave him $100 for his time, and then sent him off on his way. And then his episode aired. So we started a bit earlier. I taped in late September, early October, and it aired in November. His episode aired around February, the following February. So.
Huh.
Yeah, he just came up from San Diego, noticed that none of us were sick or arrested on day 2, and then went home.
No.
Yeah, I didn't anticipate any illness. I thought maybe there'd be somebody who would get scared.
I'm trying to think of the different circumstances that they've had to use alternates. I'm
Standards
sure.
and practices issue, maybe.
Yeah, that too.
I figured,
yeah.
if a legal thing pops up, I mean, there's so many hitches here and there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, we couldn't even get back in the studio during lunch to use the restroom, and because it was Sunday, everything at Sony was closed. So if you needed to use the restroom, you had to walk, halfway across the lot to another because they wouldn't let us back in the studio.
Wow.
Yeah.
There was a moment during the first day of taping where a family member attempted to approach Kathy? Somebody.
Eric.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And tried to give him a gift.
Oh.
And Karina was like, no, freaked out. And that would have been a situation potentially, I think, if that had gone any farther, where maybe the alternate would have been called in.
Yeah, it was after my wife remembers, because I'm pretty sure it was Eric. She was my family was sitting right next to Eric's family, and it was on Monday, and it was after his quarterfinal had taped, and he wasn't he was no longer sequestered.
So he was in the special kids row, right?
Yeah, and it was a weird moment. We all kind of got really uncomfortable. Karina definitely. Yeah, it was Karina. Yeah, so it was awkward. But I mean,
they brought him his spare shirt.
The what?
They brought him I remember someone tried to bring him his change of clothes and hand it to him.
Yes, that's what. Yeah.
Touch it and look at it or something and.
Yeah, I just saw a bag and they there was a no bad.
Huh.
I remember Karina shouting down to the table, "What the hell do we do?"
Oh.
Yeah, it was dicey. It made me nervous. I was like, I don't even want to look over. My family was sitting right. I mean, they're sitting 15 feet to the left, and I didn't even want to look at them. And
yes, I was petrified too. I was so careful not to look at the audience.
Well, I don't know if you guys remember, there was a game show probably 5 or 6 years ago called 1 vs. 100. Bob Saget was the host of the show.
Yeah.
So I got on that show, and they asked every single member of the crew to look at all of the names of the contestants and see if they recognized anybody's name. So the night before I was supposed to tape my episode, I got a call from one of the producers and said, "Do you know a guy named Rick Heller?" And I was like, "Well, the name sounds familiar." And they said, "Well, the guy said he went to school with your sister, and because somebody on the staff knows you." I'm like, "I don't even know the guy." And they said, "Well, it's just too dicey. We can't let you be on the show now." So with Jeopardy, it was I didn't even tell people that I was going on the show because I didn't want anybody to tell me my cousin works on the show or whatever it was. So I just, I kept my mouth shut even until after the show aired, even because I was so afraid something would come up that would. And then when I was a kid, you can actually find my episode of Funhouse on YouTube.
Wow.
I remember that. Yeah. Well, just look up. I don't know if it's Andrew and Evelyn or Andy and Evelyn, but I went on with my sister when I was 10 or 11. But I got on another show that got canceled called the Kiss Quiz Challenge, which was sort of like a Kids Jeopardy, and that show got canceled before I ever got a chance to be on that show. So I was I had this bad luck run of luck. So I made it to this one to at least tape the show, and that was good enough.
I'm going to YouTube that for sure. Your Funhouse episode.
Yeah.
I had, it was interesting leading up to it, just as far as, talking about precautions. There's so many people who reached out and said, I know so-and-so, and they were on Jeopardy, if you want any advice. And, most of the time I'm like, whatever, except one of my really good friends, her older brother's best friend is Roger Craig, who's, obviously a, Jeopardy legend. And so she was like, well, I can put you in touch with Roger, and he's a legend for his prep. And I had the email address, and Roger Craig actually sent me an email, and I never responded because I was so nervous. So here I blew off Roger Craig, but I was so particular about, do you know this person? Have you talked to that person? That I didn't want to do anything to jeopardize, the eligibility for the show in any way. But one of my groomsmen actually in my wedding won a game of Jeopardy, but I haven't talked to him in probably 7 or 8 years, so that one was easy to say no.
Doesn't Roger Craig have the record for highest one-day score?
Yeah.
77,000.
He wrote a computer program.
Yeah.
that ran an algorithm with all of J-Archive's game scores and he essentially picked up all of the patterns and prepped based on the what the computer program told him. It's phenomenal to watch. He was incredible.
Huh.
That's actually
almost got hooked into that. So,
yeah.
But
it's
that would have
actually one of the reasons, or Roger's program is one of the reasons why every time a daily double comes up, first category on the left, 1600, I'm always like surprise when I'm doing the recaps for the blog.
Yeah, he's a legend. And so when my friend was like, yeah, I grew up with a guy who won a couple games on Jeopardy, and I was like, oh, okay, a lot of people know, especially here in DC, there's so many people who have been on Jeopardy. But when she said Roger Craig, like my eyes just kind of bugged out of my head for a second. I was like, wait, what? It was too bad that I couldn't, there was a resource that I had to say no to.
Okay, we are almost at the 90-minute mark, and I think it's definitely our longest one ever now. At this point, I think it's a good time for us to say thank you all for tuning in. Thank you all for joining us, and once again, hopefully you get a number of more episodes on King of the Nerds, Colby.
Well, some number between 1 and 4, right? We'll see.
But I'm hoping you end up winning. So let's and that way we can. I certainly want to keep having you on as long as King of the Nerds is still going on this season. So thank you again for joining us. Also, thank you to Andrew for your insights on this past weekend or this past week of Sports Jeopardy. And also, congratulations to Adam on making the final, as well as Colin and Lydia on making the semifinals. And also thanks to Mary and Christine for being able to join us as well this week. I'd like to thank all of you for tuning in. Nick, I'm not sure when number 27 will be, but it will be at some point next weekend. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you all for joining us for the JeopardyFan.com. I am not Harrison Ford. Have a good night.